Is that good? Okay. So it is 7 o'clock. We are going to start the regularly scheduled meeting of the City of Elmhurst Zoning and Planning Commission. First, as our new protocol during the pandemic, what we need to do is check to make sure everyone can hear me. So first, I will check all the commissioners. Commissioner Garland, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Hoffman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner McCoy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Callaway, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Pittman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Commissioner Snyder, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Court reporter Kiki Andriopoulos, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
All right. Is anyone in the applicant room? It does not look like it. No. Okay. The public comment room, Mike Kopp, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
All right. Eileen, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Emily, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And then I'm going to ask Mike Stenson if he can hear me. Okay. Eileen, should I go through everyone who is, I'll just do a blanket for both applicants and public? Or should I go to them specifically?
I do think you need to go to them specifically. You don't need to identify necessarily who they are, but just call on each person to make sure that they can hear us and we can hear them.
Okay, well, the first applicant, Mr. Karavet, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
The next one, I know that this is Ms. I'll get this. Lapola?
Yes, I can hear you.
Ms. Janowski, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Ms. Wilson, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Applicant Leslie, can you hear me?
That might be a double of mine. I don't know how to delete it though.
I can't help you. I don't know how to do that, but that's fine. Mr. Kolsky, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
And Ms. Delaney, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I've established that everyone can hear me. I will now ask City Planner Eileen Franz to please call the roll to establish a quorum.
Commissioner Burns is absent. Commissioner Callaway?
Here.
Commissioner Garland?
Here.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Here.
Commissioner McCoy?
Here.
Commissioner Pittman?
Here.
Commissioner Snyder?
Here.
Commissioner Uditsky is, I think, joining right now. We can come back to him. Chair Rose?
Here.
And then Commissioner Uditsky, are you all connected and can you hear us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm here. I was just stuck on a client call. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Glad to have you. So we have a quorum. The next item of business is the receipt of written communications. Eileen, is there any written communications that we have other than what is on board docs?
Everything we've received so far has been added to board docs for the cases.
Okay. I'm going to go back. I skipped over public comment. I got these out of order. Next item of business is public comment. This is the point in our agenda where anyone can make a comment on really any zoning issue that you happens to be on your mind or that you want to talk about. I do want to advise you, however, if you wish to make a comment about one of the cases that we are going to hear and on which we will have public testimony tonight, this would not be the best time for you to speak because your comments would not be a part of the public record. So if you want your comments to be part of the public record and you want us to pay attention to those comments during deliberation, then I would suggest there will be a point later on where you can speak. But if you want to talk about a general zoning issue, you have 3 minutes to do that. And I would ask first Eileen and Emily to check email or voicemail to see if anyone outside of those in this meeting right now wish to make a public comment.
There are no emails. Emily is going to go check the voicemail.
Okay. We'll give her 30 seconds.
There are no voicemails for public comment.
Great, thank you. Mike, I don't see anyone in that room, but is there anyone in that room who wishes to make public comment?
No, there is not.
Okay. Anyone else on this particular Zoom meeting wish to make public comment at this point? Seeing no one, we'll move on to the next item of business. Okay, the next item of business is case number 4.01, the approval of minutes of the January 20th meeting. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes and a second?
Motion to approve.
Commissioner Callaway moves. Is there a second? Commissioner Snyder. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections to the minutes? Okay. Seeing none, I will ask Eileen to call the roll to approve the minutes.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Burns is absent. Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner McCoy.
You're muted. Commissioner McCoy, you're muted.
Said unmute. No, I'm unmuted, right?
Now
Yep.
you're unmuted, right.
Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Uditsky.
Yes.
Chair Rose.
Yes, thank you. Before we start, I'm going to ask everybody who is not speaking to please mute your microphones. I can't mute applicant, okay. And then unmute them when you speak. Mike, Stenson, you are the host. Could you please mute everyone who is not speaking at this point? Or else please make me the host, make me a co-host, and I will do that. Okay, so I'll just ask you to please stay muted, and only the person who is speaking at that point to unmute themselves. It just really helps us. So, okay, I am going to hand the first case to Emily. Is that correct? Emily, please,
Yes.
Can you introduce this case to us?
Great. Thank you, Chair Rose. This is case 20 ZBA 11. The application was filed on December 14th, 2020. It's a variation request from lot coverage requirement from 30% to 32% to install a pergola with solar panels. The legal notice of public hearing was done on 1/7/2021. The date of the posting of the sign was 1/8/2021. The first class mailing of notice was 1/7/2021. And the public hearing is tonight, 1/26/2021. The applicant is Rihanna Carvetti, and John Carvetti is here. Apologize if that's not the correct pronunciation. He is here on behalf of the applicant tonight. The interest in the property is they are the company that creates and installs the solar panels, that installs the item that is being requested tonight. I did want to point out there was an updated staff report uploaded to board docs, just a correction from 31.5% to 32%, and happy to answer any questions about that.
Okay, before we go further, I'm going to ask why the applicant is not here, especially as we might have questions. I'll be curious why the applicant is not here, and if Mr. Caravette is empowered to speak and make decisions for the applicant.
I am, excuse me, the applicant is a doctor. He works on the front lines. He is sorry that he wasn't able to make it here. He does manage a hospital and a group of doctors, so his time is quite a bit limited. But I can answer for him. I'm very familiar with his, know him for many years and very familiar with his situation.
Okay, thank you. All right. I'm going to ask the court reporter to please swear in everyone who intends to speak tonight, even if you're not sure you're going to speak, but you may be moved to speak at some point. But I'm going to ask you to be sworn in. Just because you're sworn in does not mean you have to speak. You can decide not to speak for whatever reason, but I'm going to ask the court reporter to please swear in everyone at this point.
Would you please raise your right hand for me, please? Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in all this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm just going to make sure we're not swearing in for each individual case. So if you're not going to speak on this case, but on other ones, you should be sworn in. So just want to make sure people understand that. Okay. So let me give you folks an idea how the process will run here. We will first ask the applicant to testify based on the materials they have submitted. After that, the commission will have a time period where they can ask any question of the applicant. And after that is completed, anyone in the public who wishes to testify on this case will have 5 minutes to testify. And we'll also check voicemail and email in case there are people who are watching this with YouTube who would like to testify or give public comment at that point. We'll be doing that. The applicant then will have an opportunity to respond to public comment if they, or questions if they wish, and then we will close the public hearing. So that is the process we will use for all of the cases in front of us today. So I will ask Mr. Caravette to please comment on the request for variation at 520 South Hillside. And just so Mr. Caravette, you know, everyone receives this material, they all read it. It's our normal practice that we would go out and view the property. I will have to admit, I did not do that today, given the weather. Some may or may not have, so, but that is, we normally will ask zoning commissioners to do that. But I'm pretty familiar with actually this area, so.
Right. Well, as the commission has mentioned, we're looking to show that we have a good cause for the 3 variation standards and hope that you will too. The plight of the owner, and due to this unique situation of circumstances that he's in, is his backyard has a tremendous amount of sunlight that floods it. You know, he's on the corner, he gets a lot of sunlight, and it makes it, his complaint has always been it's not really functional for him to enjoy it until late in the evening. In the summertime, that evening comes around 7, 8 o'clock at night. And they actually do use the backyard throughout the year. So his big concern was to make something functional and sustainable, but also have the quality to be able to function and withstand year-round elements and be there for many years to come. So his demand for high quality, also this canopy that we're proposing here is, it's not a pergola. I want to make that clear. It's more of a canopy where we have, it's a full cantilever design where, as you saw in your handouts there, it's more of a upside down L shape, if you will, so that it doesn't take up any more surface area of the backyard patio. So it's actually right over the existing concrete patio. We have it designed as a cantilever because therefore it doesn't have additional surface area on the patio to restrict flow and function. So again, it was the main thing was, relief from the sun. He really had a high quality demand that he wanted on this unit. The aesthetics, obviously, is very particular about his home. He wanted something that would match, complement, and function, and give him year-round use. And I think that this does that for him. It's also unique in that we also understand that this is the first application that the city has applied for a variance of this nature, solar canopy, which again further enforces the uniqueness of this situation. Why we're happy that you're taking our comments here. And we understand that it's relatively new. Solar is relatively new for a lot of cities and homeowners, that some ordinances haven't taken into consideration of this additional built feature that could have at a home, on a property. The other variation, if granted, is that it will not alter the character of the neighborhood. In fact, we think that after substantial amount of due diligence and research and searching, we found a canopy that would complement the look of the neighborhood and complement the look of his home, that it looked like a piece that belonged there. He had looked at a number of canopies and gazebos and pergolas, none of which really had this sustainability element to it, and the quality and the function, and they were either too big for him or too small, and just didn't look appropriate in the backyard. And he feared his neighbors would not like it as well. And he was very conscious of their needs as well, and he actively involved them in his decisions as well. So the form and function of sustainability. What's nice about the canopy is that it does have solar panels that are mounted and act as two functions. It's part of the shading. They are translucent in that they diffuse the sunlight coming from above, but add a substantial amount of shading so that it does allow the use underneath it for the people to use it under there during the summer sun. And it's a very strong and robust structure in that it can handle the snow loading and wind loading very easily. It's not going to be an issue for him. It requires very little maintenance, if any, compared to the other options that were out there. And again, we think that it would enhance. And it's also surrounded by his large wooden fence. And it's towards the northern portion of his backyard, where it's further away from that side street. So from the sidewalk, you wouldn't see it. You would probably have to be on the other side at the park, looking towards it, and you may be able to see that structure at that point. But other than that, it's very low maintenance or low profile. But his main, the third, variation being the reasonable enjoyment of the property. And again, as I mentioned, it's the backyard does get a tremendous amount of sunlight. That's always been his complaint, is that it does not allow him to really use it well. They're sensitive to light. Their children are out there as much as they can be, given the conditions. They try not to be out there in direct sunlight. They minimize their exposure out there. And they also wanted something that is more substantial. Unlike what you could find is canvas or umbrellas, that canvas doesn't really lend the ability to position it where they needed the shading. The canopies are canvas. They're really not designed for the rigors of 4 seasons. They will be something that would have to be taken down seasonally and replaced every 2 to 5 years. And it's a fabric. It's not something that looks complementary to his home or the other homes around him. And so this is, but the main thing is that this would provide a much needed relief for the home and also lower the home's fossil fuel consumption. That was a big deal for him. They're environmentalists, and they have do as much as they can to make the house as energy efficient as possible and to lower their carbon footprint. So I think that's, the other thing is that I want to clarify that, again, this is not like a shed. It's only has a top that is shading. Okay, so we have some vertical poles that do come down, but it's more like a structure like this, coming out of the ground, this poles, and then the solar panels would be up here. So the angle is allowing for shading or sheathing of the rain and snow and ice to slide off to the backyard. And then it also allows the height for them to use underneath the structure as well. But there's no walls, no doors, no windows. Just basically, like I said, it's a it's only, again, also it's only taking up another 2% of the structure of the property, of the footprint. So in a way, it's not really, the way I looked at it too is if it was a home that you have a footprint, and part of that footprint, I was looking at this and I thought my interpretation could be totally wrong here too, of course, but my interpretation is we have a backyard, back patio, and we're not adding to that back patio. We're not adding to other structures. We're just putting a canopy over the existing patio. So we're not adding square footage of built surface area. So the footprint doesn't change.
Okay. Questions from the commission? Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you, Chair Rose. Hi, how tall is the canopy? What's the height?
Yes, the low side is about 8 feet and the high side is about 12 feet.
Okay, so what, okay, it's 12 feet at its highest point.
The highest point.
Okay, what is the angle of the canopy?
That is restricted to 5 degrees.
5-degree angle? Okay. And then one of the things I'm wondering about is the solar panels that I'm seeing and have experience with. When the light is low in the sky, there can be a highly reflective quality to it or glare. And I'm just wondering if that's going to impact the neighbors at all, if the neighbors are aware that at some points of the day or under certain lighting conditions that they might experience that. Is that, you said, although that these are translucent solar panels, so maybe you can talk about the reflective quality.
Yes, Commissioner, let me just correct myself. I apologize. The maximum height of this, because this canopy is a custom made item, the low side is 8 feet. The high side is 10.5 feet.
10.5 feet. Okay, thank you for that correction.
And then, but yes, the uniqueness of these solar panels absorbing the light. They have a textured prismatic or design that the light doesn't reflect off of it. It's also unique in that because he has a white concrete patio, we wanted to take advantage of the reflectivity or the albedo effect of that white surface. The light from the sun hits that concrete, reflects back up to the back side of those solar panels, and it adds to the performance of it. So some people would say, well, you're not going to get the best bang for your buck with the solar panels there. It wasn't so much, it's an expensive proposition for him, but this is his desire to do something sustainable and not to infringe on the enjoyment of his neighbor to the north of him. We looked at that. He would not have any chance of reflectance of any sort from the angle of the sun, because the neighbor behind him, the sun would be at that level where it would be behind their trees.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Great. Did he have a chance to request any written support from his neighbors or phone-in support or anything like that? This is just...
He has spoken to them, but I don't have anything else other than that.
Okay. And one final question. So just taking information that was outlined in the staff report, I did a little math, and it appears that if the homeowner were limited to the 30% coverage requirement, based on the calculations that I did, that they would only be able to install a 5 square foot pergola or canopy. Did anyone do the math, Eileen or Emily? I'm sorry.
Yes, Commissioner Snyder, that's correct. When the home was built, there was remaining 5 square feet.
5 square feet would be left over for them to put up a canopy, which really wouldn't be very usable. What is the size of each of the individual solar panels?
They're approximately 68 inches by 40 inches. 40 inches wide, 68 inches tall.
Okay. How many panels in total will be installed?
There would be 2 rows of 5, a total of 10.
A total of 10. And there will be no gap or space between each of the panels. It's designed as a closed roof. Is that right?
That's exactly right, yes.
Is it at all possible to design them with a gap?
It can be. Yes, it can be. That's typically what we would have on a roof for cooling purposes. Mm-hmm. We have a gap in between the panels. And also because we don't have access to the underside, we're limited to top-down type of clamping. But in this unique situation with the canopy, we can get away with having a completely butt up against each other, and therefore we could make it look more monolithic, and a nice clean look to it.
Okay, and then just a last question for city staff, and I'm just curious about this. If the solar panels were in fact installed with a gap between each panel, would the structure then count toward lot coverage, or would that still count as a roof? Would it count toward lot coverage or not? Because in the staff report you mentioned if it was a pergola with slats, it would not count toward lot coverage, but in this case it would. So if there were a gap between these panels, how would that work?
I can take that if you'd like, Eileen. Let me know if you agree with this. If there was just one gap in that structure, I don't know if that would constitute enough area for it to be considered not part of lot coverage. We would have to do a little bit more thorough review, but if it truly was just one gap, it might help with reducing the lot coverage that's being requested. But based on my understanding of the interpretation of this would not be something that would be considered not lot coverage just because there's one gap between them.
Well, if each of the panels had, a few inches spacing between them, for example, so it wouldn't just be one gap, it would be more like a gridded gap. So maybe, Eileen, you have some thoughts on that?
So I think it probably would still be too much coverage. when we have these other pergolas that were referred to in the staff report, it truly is more just like a slat and then a space, a slat and then a space, a slat and then a space, where I think these panels would still take up quite a bit of bulk on the roof. And I don't know that we would have to look at dimensions and everything like Emily said, but I think it's unlikely that we would be able to not consider it to be coverage.
Okay, so we don't have any published percentage or threshold of open air versus panel.
We do not. This is an area of the code that hopefully will be reviewed when we update the zoning ordinance this year.
And Eileen, we can, I mean, if I, like you said, you don't think it mattered, but this being a custom canopy, it's something that we could certainly modify or design with a gap. Again, it's not much of an issue as far as where we can put these panels at this point. So the structure is not built yet. So if you needed a gap between all the panels all the way around, certainly it's something we can do.
Chair Rose?
Okay, yes.
I think the way we look at it is the gap would have to be greater than the solid part to be an open air roof, right? You can't have the solid larger than the gap. Like a pergola, it's 1.5 inches, then it's a foot of opening, 1.5 inches, then it's a foot of opening.
Correct.
Or greater or less, but it's the totality is the open space is greater than the covered space.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. That's all my questions. Thank you.
Okay. Any other commissioner have questions? Commissioner McCoy. You are muted, Commissioner McCoy. Commissioner McCoy, you're muted. There you go. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to get this straight. If they built the pergola and had a canvas over the top of it, which you could move back and forth, that wouldn't count as any lot coverage.
Those are currently not allowed.
So you can't have a pergola with a canvas cover over the top.
Correct.
Could you have like an umbrella that size?
I mean, yes, you can have a table with an umbrella, but a pergola with like a canvas cover would fall into the membrane structure category of the code.
Even though it would be like movable, I mean, you could like take it up, take it down. Okay. At any time, if that covers that space. Okay. Thank you.
Eileen, can I add one other question I have? You're familiar with those awnings that roll out, those canopies that roll out. Is that allowed as well or not allowed? Just for my own knowledge, I was curious.
I don't know that our plan reviewer has dealt with those. I would need to talk to him about that.
Okay.
Susan, you're muted.
Yeah, I just saw that. Commissioner Callaway, then Commissioner Garland.
Yeah, Mr. Carabatti, has there, to your knowledge, has there been any discussion with the neighbors about the structure?
Yes, as far as, to my knowledge, the homeowner has discussed this idea with his neighbor. He only has one neighbor right next door to him, to the north of him. He's on the corner.
Okay, and what, do you have any knowledge of what that neighbor's feedback was?
Very favorable. He was just, it's because the way it was shown to him how we would look, how the system would look, it wasn't going to take away from his view. It wasn't going to obstruct his enjoyment or take away from the aesthetics of his home or the neighborhood.
And you're saying this is the neighbor to the north?
To the north of him, yes.
Okay, well, he's got a neighbor to the west too.
The neighbor to the west, you wouldn't see it. The amount of trees and growth and the tall fence, you would never see it. They would never see it.
Okay, but it looks like in one of the drawings that you gave us that if you're walking along the fence that's on the south side, so it would be between the street and his property, it looks like, you know, well, and it has to at 10, I think you said 10.5 feet of elevation. The fence is not going to obstruct it. I mean, you are going to be able to see it from the sidewalk and the street. To my knowledge, there's no trees on the south side of the property that would hide it.
There's no trees on the south side of the property, on his property, that would hide it. You're right. The fence is a tall fence that I suppose I'm height challenged. So at 5.5 feet, I didn't see. I would have to look, you'd have to look, get up pretty high to see, or maybe be a 6 foot tall person, or stand back and see perhaps the top part of the highest point of 10.5 feet. You would probably be.
Well, in one of your renderings, it is showing. That's what I'm questioning.
I would say that you could probably see it like that. I was thinking that's probably the worst case scenario, but that's across the street.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Garland.
Thanks, Chair Rose. I guess just one question. A lot of the questions have been asked, but I fully appreciate the sustainability aspect of this project. And so I congratulate you and the applicant for that, or the homeowner for that. So the question for you, though, and this is more, I guess, out of curiosity, you talked about their susceptibility to light, the issue with the intense sunlight throughout the day and the need for something like this. Where did trees fit into this equation for them, if at all? Because it looks like the backyard, save for maybe a tree, it's pretty barren. And so can you talk to me about where that fit into the equation as opposed to as an alternative to what's being proposed?
Well, I suppose that there's the potential they do have a tree in the parkway right to the south of their building. So there is a tall tree there that was retained. It's a new structure, so a lot of the plants around the home are new. They're young, so they're not very tall. Along the fence of the backyard, he doesn't have, with the idea of the solar being there, he didn't want to impede the performance of the solar array as well. But he does have some trees on the northern portion of the building, of the lot. There are some of his neighbors. There are trees at the southwest corner of his yard as well. But those were all existing. So I guess, he doesn't really want to change that. I guess he was concerned about the function of the solar canopy as well.
So trees weren't considered as an option to this? It's
a tree, well, unless it wasn't going to be an immediate solution. It would be something that he could plant, but he wouldn't see the benefit until many years, after which time his kids would have been grown up and moved on by that time. So he was looking for a more of a permanent, immediate solution that they can go out to and enjoy underneath this canopy, and have it so that it's not something that he would have to add to his maintenance requirements. His home is built with the idea of minimal maintenance, if at all, and being sustainable. So the whole idea of this canopy was also that to provide that shade, to provide that enjoyment of the backyard, and to provide an additional benefit to help lower his carbon footprint.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner have a question? Commissioner Hoffman.
Thank you, Chair Rose. I guess my question revolves around the homeowner to the north. I'm assuming similar circumstances existed for this homeowner, homes oriented the same way, backyards of similar size, hardscapes included. It looks like they address their issue with the pergola. I'm assuming, based on what I've read in this report, that would be something that would be approvable without a variance. Has this been considered as it wouldn't require a variance and would address the majority of the homeowner's needs, with maybe the possible exception being the sustainability aspect of the project?
A pergola doesn't offer the level of shading that he's looking to get. A canopy does, where a canvas would offer that as well, just not the quality level that he's accustomed to or was what his requirements were. But year-round function of a pergola is it's not really a year-round function of a pergola. Is more of I think it's more of aesthetic and an architectural feature. It's really not going to provide. It does provide some shade depending on the position of those slats, if you will, and depending on the angle of the sun. But in his situation, I've been in his backyard in the summer, and after 11 o'clock, he's in full sunlight back there, and it is pretty intense. Of course, the white concrete patio doesn't help, and it helps reflect even more sunlight around there. So it does become quite bright back there. So unfortunately, I don't see the pergola offering him that type of relief.
And then maybe one follow-up question. The home already does have, a solar array on the roof. What does the 10 additional panels that you're suggesting, how much additional capacity does that provide?
Yeah, it does add additional capacity of, I think I have it inside the helioscope. Is part of the attachment there, and it spells out that it would produce an additional, make sure I got it, another 4,200 kilowatt hours a year for him. Now that's a lot for any application, but he also has a large home, uses a lot more electricity, and uses more electric appliances than what most homes would, because he could make his own electricity. He was avoiding buying gas appliances where he could. He also owns electric vehicles, so that was a recent purchase after the solar array was installed, and he's exceeding his need. So he would like to get back to a net zero home. This will bring him closer to that.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you, Chair Rose. I think my question is more for deliberation and not for a question of the. Thank you.
Commissioner Pittman.
Thank you, Chair Rose. This question's for the applicant. I guess I'm struggling with how this situation is unique to any other home in Elmhurst on a corner lot with the same elevations, facing the same places, or a lot that maybe has few trees that faces directly south that gets even more sunlight. I know you've written, or the owner has written, a very substantial letter about the plight being unique, but I guess I'm giving you one more chance to convince me, because I'm not really sure that I think that this is a unique situation.
Well, it's unique in that it's not something that you guys have had, and correct me if I'm wrong, solar-wise, a structure like this. It's unique in that it wasn't a structure like this isn't considered part of the building coverage or a sustainable option, and maybe considerations in the zoning for a structure like this. He's also again, it's also a light sensitivity thing for him and his family, and he also has, he wanted to put up a structure, and we've talked about a number of different structures that he could put up that he probably could be okay with, but none of them met those shading requirements and the function throughout the year requirements. He didn't have the ability to, he didn't want to maintain it. That's his big thing when he was building this home. Just, the minimum maintenance requirements, which requires high quality materials. And he's okay with that. He wants a high quality. As you can see from his home and the structure, the solar array on his roof, it's all about quality. So he's very important there. I guess another unique feature is that it could have been a different structure. It could have been something a little bit more affordable, something that more off the shelf, if you will. But this was something that he wanted to complement his home and the neighborhood. He didn't want to take away from the aesthetics of the surrounding neighborhood and his neighbors. He took their input and took their feedback, and it was a very important part of his decision-making process. What else? I was just looking at some of my other notes, but I guess then of course the obvious thing is the use of the solar panels. Again, these solar panels that he's chosen are unique in that they are what we call bifacial. They, in addition to absorbing sunlight from one side, they do absorb light on the bottom side, or the opposite side, and they use that surface area, the white patio, concrete patio, as a way to absorb that reflectivity of that concrete. So it's unique in that, so it's a little different in that the structure needed to be open on the bottom side. I guess a pergola doesn't offer that type of function. It does have these slats, but all those slats restrict the light. A canopy like this, where it's a cantilever design, like the full cantilever design like this, allows for the light to be absorbed unimpeded from the reflected of the patio.
Thank you.
Any other commissioner? I have a few questions. I'm assuming that the applicant, Mr. Lee, he's the original owner of this home. The home was built for him. And how long ago was that?
It's within the last 5 years, I think it was.
Last 5 years. And when he built the home, he was pretty aware of what the 30% lot coverage was. Would you say that? Or his builder was? They were aware? Because before you answer that, Eileen, what is the exact coverage of this home right now? 29 point what percent?
Give me just a second. Emily, do you know that off the top of your head? Actually, do you have the calculation?
Because it doesn't say it in the report. It says existing proposed, and that's not terribly helpful.
So I do have that. One moment.
It's just going to be just under 30 because it's 5 square feet from being 30%. 105 square feet is 1%.
So it's probably
29.9
something.
Yes, 29.9.
So I'm curious, was Mr. Lee was aware of the sunlight? He was aware apparently of light sensitivity. Why was this design not included when the home was built, and when we could actually meet that 30% guideline? That was not the guideline, it's really our code. I'm just curious why that was. He didn't.
I think, I'm sorry, Commissioner. I think what is a part of the thing here is that I think a lot of people don't take solar as a canopy option or a canopy like this. They didn't realize that these structures are available, and they've come a long way since in the last 5-10 years now. And but you know, he was built. This is his first time he's ever built a home. He bought the lot from the builder. The builder had a spec of the design of home that was already planned to be on it. And I'm going to say it's maybe this is something that's more of an afterthought. The fact is that if he was a seasoned builder, and he had a good, real understanding of what the backyard would have been like, and the use of the white concrete patio, they probably would have incorporated some more structure in that, would have added to, instead of maybe make the building a little shorter and then have a structure coming out of the back. Maybe close up.
Yeah, as my father always says, hindsight is 40/40. So apparently he did not anticipate this. So, but he was fully aware. The builder was fully aware, and I'm assuming the buyer, I hope, was fully aware that the 30% lot coverage is taken very seriously in this town. So just want to say that. I would like to get your definition of light sensitive. You've said that over and over. Is there a medical condition that someone in this family has where can you just define that further, what you're trying to tell us by saying they're light sensitive?
Yeah, they're of Asian descent, and they burn. They're sensitive to the sun in that it doesn't take long for them to burn. He also has a high concern for his skin cancer. I guess he's predisposed to it. So he has some concern for that and for his children.
So and there's no medical condition that we are aware of, that when you say light sensitive, there's no medical condition that we're aware of at this point. Sounds like would be the case.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to burn and melt in the sun and die from that. There's no immediate danger in that, but being a doctor and being familiar with it and having a family predisposed to, I guess he had skin cancer in the family, so his concern is that it could be something that could run in the family.
Sure. I guess my other question is this, which is why they've decided for a permanent solution, which means, and let me define what that means, which is 12 months out of the year being able to use your backyard. I look outside at my backyard today, it's covered with snow. Why they decided to consider a permanent solution in an area that truly has less than 50% of the days, certainly even in the summer, that are full sunlight. So I'm curious why a permanent solution as opposed to really something that is temporary that would fit within the 30% coverage guidelines.
Well, his big thing is that he just didn't want to, when he was building the home, working with his wife and the builder, one of the things that it was interesting is he said his wife was saying she likes the stonework on the bottom, 3 feet of the home. And she said, wouldn't it look better if it was the other way around, where we had just stucco at the top 3 feet? And he goes, well, that's a lot of stone going all the way up. He goes, but he agreed, and it does lend to the longevity, the maintenance free, and that was a big deal for him when it came to building this home, was that the sustainable elements of it, in that if you could certainly buy, he could have bought a less expensive wood fence, okay? Requires sanding replacements throughout the years, something like that. He opted to spend a bit more for a recycled plastic type of fence, where he doesn't have to replace this on a regular basis, and it's strong. The same thing with this structure. It's strong. It's not something that he has to take down in the fall. It's not something that he would have to paint every other year. It's not something that he would have to worry about the kids climbing on or wind blowing it over or snow loading. As we can see today, anything back in the backyard today would be challenged. This is a much more robust solution and aesthetically more pleasing.
So like that, right. So an umbrella that closes, of course, would not be open to that. So it sounds like they did work with the builder through this process. And I'm sympathetic with, the desire to be an environmentalist, and then the desire to have no maintenance does lead to plastic fences, leads to stuff that may not be aesthetically pleasing, but I'm just curious about that. The other thing is, I understand a permanent solution, but do they use their backyard in the winter? Is that something they do use in the winter?
Yeah, I'm sure the kids that were out there today, they were all excited and to get out there and roll around in it. They are, they do use it. He did explain to me that they do use it every chance they can get. They have young kids that love being out there.
Yeah. So 5 years ago, when they worked with the builder, did they work with really a landscaper? Did they think about tree? I'm bouncing off of Commissioner Garland's question, which I think is reasonable. Had they considered landscaping for shade at that point? 5 years ago, trees grow pretty fast. Had they considered that at that point, or they just hadn't thought about it? Again, hindsight being 40/40.
Yeah. I don't know. I wish Dr. Lee was here with us. He can mention it. But knowing what I know and discussing this with him, I don't think solar was a topic of discussion 5 years ago. Certainly not as we've been doing solar I've been doing solar for 20 years now, and I don't know how we survived 20 years ago, considering what it's like today. We're very busy with solar. It seems like, everyone's talking about solar and sustainability. We see that ordinances are changing and modifying and adjusting to these new requests and new technologies as they come along. We only put these solar panels on his roof 2 years ago. And so it wasn't something that, when they were building this home, that they even were thinking of that, because it wasn't like something that he really knew was an option. His life has changed and things have, he's been blessed and he's fortunate. And so he was able to do things that perhaps, some less fortunate could afford, so he was able to do that. And he didn't just go with just a solar array. He wanted to do an array that will severely impact his electric bill.
He's got quite a few on his roof. I've seen that. Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So, a home that, here it is, a home that size, he was spending $600 a month on average. He's paying $15 a month now.
Okay.
Just to be connected to that. But then along came Tesla and says, hey, we got an electric car, and now everything's going electric. So certainly all of us will be driving within 10 years, maybe even as short as 5 years, we'll all be driving an electric car. And that's not something that he was planning for when he was building this home. But it is something that, technology changes and we have to adjust for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you. Yes, one more question. Is there capacity on his roof to install more panels, more solar panels?
Yeah, no, I've spent quite a bit of time and with when we designed that system, and we have maximized this roof. There is no other place that we could legitimately put the solar panels that would function properly. He does have a north-facing angle, but the sun is in the south, And that's why we have as much panels on the south as we can. And then we have the west is the second most sunlight, and the east is also exposed to the sunlight in the morning. So it's quite fascinating, Commissioner, when you look at his array online, and we give him an app where he can see it. The array, there's what we call a virtual array. You see the east, you see the south array, and you see the west array. And as the sun comes up, you see that the solar panels on the east get brighter and brighter blue, and you can see the actual wattage number coming off of those. And you can see the south picking up, but then as the sun gets over, those south panels really start to ramp up. And that's where the east panels start to ramp down. And then the sun gets to the west, and those start to ramp up even more, whereas the south starts to slowly taper. Right at that point where he's at in the west, when it gets to about 11 o'clock, that's where the sun is going to be hitting that canopy and will start to produce energy, probably as early as 10:30. And they actually produce even more. They don't need to be in direct sunlight to produce energy. But it was the function that, hey, you know what? We do have a lot of sunlight back here. Couldn't we get more panels? Maybe we can make a dual purpose structure here, because his purpose was shading. And then I said, here's a dual purpose. Here's one that it's going to mainly, one, provide you the shade that you need, and two, the enjoyment, and three, the sustainability aspect of it.
Okay, I was just trying to get at if there were other options for installing additional capacity. And, I did see on the aerial view of the property, it looks like there's to the west, there's a section of roof that does not have panels on it.
It's too small. It's too small of an area.
So for all intents and purposes, there's no additional capacity or way for him to install any more solar panels than there are without the addition of this canopy.
That's correct.
Or some other structure. Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCoy, you had a comment you wanted to make?
I guess so that this structure actually functions for the entire year, not just for shade, but for supplying electricity to the home so that he can power up his electric car.
That's correct.
So it serves a purpose 24 for the entire year, not just for shade.
Absolutely. That's a beautiful part about it is that sun is pretty reliable. We know where it's coming every day of the year, unlike today. But it is something that contributes to the home throughout the year. Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Any other commissioner? Okay. I'm going to ask if there's any, I'm going to ask Eileen or Emily to please check if there's anyone in either by voicemail or email from the public who would like to give testimony on this case.
There are no voicemails for public comment.
And no emails.
Okay, is there anyone else in this virtual meeting who would like to give public comment on this? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for this case.
Ms. Rose, can I just add one thing, if I may? I'm sorry. I wanted to say that this structure is custom, can be modified to be lower, wider, narrower. At this point, it's like I said, it's custom. So if there were specific requirements that the board wanted to see, the commission wanted to see, that these are things that we could accommodate.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, public hearing is now closed. Let me ask if there is, it has been our practice in past, if no one objects to deliberate on the same evening. If we deliberate, we will hold this off until we hear the other two cases, I think so. But does anyone wish to object to deliberating on this case this evening? really think that they would like more time to consider, to look at everything. Let me ask where people are with that. Okay, then we will deliberate this case. I'm willing to do it now. Let me ask commissioners what your thinking is. Do you want to deliberate now on this, or do you want us to wait until we have the other two cases? Thoughts?
Can we do it now?
Sure, we could. All right, then fine. Then we will deliberate now, since all the information is fresh in everyone's mind. So, can I have a motion to approve the variance and a second to approve that, so that we can move into deliberation? Motion to approve, Commissioner Callaway. Second, Commissioner Snyder. All right, Commissioner Callaway.
Thanks, Chair Rose. I'm picking up on something that Commissioner Pittman said, and I know we're not asking for, the applicant here isn't asking for a huge variation, but it is a variation nonetheless. And we've had lots of discussions about, we have a code for a reason. And if we're making variations, then, you got to be able to satisfy the criteria. I too am having a very difficult time getting through some of the criteria. And I think, starting with the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. I think anybody in town who's got a backyard on a cement slab facing west is going to have a similar situation. And, there were a lot of questions asked about, was this considered at the time that the house was built? Obviously the applicant knew that he was building the cement patio, and that this backyard would be west facing, and sunlight might be a problem. There are certainly other options here, as has been discussed. I know they're not optimal options, but there are the things that can be done without a variance. So I'm really having a hard time getting past that first criteria, because I frankly don't think it's been met. The variation, if granted, will not alter the essential character of the neighborhood. I think there's some question about, this is a unique structure, and, I would echo Commissioner Garland's statements about this being energy efficient, and and that's great. I mean, looking for more sustainable options, but he's maxed out the solar panels on his roof. So I mean, I think certainly we already have a energy efficient structure. The idea that making this permanent structure provide having additional panels, I mean, that's great, but certainly you still have to get through the first criteria, and I think that's a problem. But specifically, I think this structure can be seen, and I'm less concerned with meeting this criteria because I don't think the first one has been met, but I do think there's a question here. The property in question cannot yield a reasonable return or provide the owner or tenants a reasonable enjoyment of the property if permitted to be used only under the conditions allowed by the regulations. Again, I think it's a nice house. It's a nice backyard. There are certainly other options. I understand that this is the option that the applicant wants, but I think, again, I don't think that third criteria has necessarily been met either.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you. So, yeah, I too had a great deal of trouble as I thought about the set of circumstances. I really don't think there's anything inherently unique about the petitioner's physical property or his circumstances or desire for a high quality canopy for shade. So I would like to recognize, and I think it should be recognized, that the homeowners are really looking to push the envelope in pursuit of a permanent, multifunctional, aesthetically pleasing residential solution to what is a global challenge of sustainable energy production. And I would like to point out that I think that they're doing so in a way that's sensitive to the neighborhood scale and aesthetics. I think they're looking to really help blaze a new trail and set new standards. And, we've all seen solar panels on roofs and solar lighting, but the introduction of solar and other meaningful residential applications is really just beginning to emerge. And I think we as a commission should make room for that growth and evolution. And maybe that's a question for actually the city council and, as we move forward on that. But in that regard, I also agree that the first condition really is not fully met. Condition 2 about the essential character of the neighborhood. I did visit the property. I do think that the canopy design blends in well with the aesthetic of the home and won't enter the essential character of the neighborhood. It has the look, feel, and scale of a modern residential canopy, and the neighbor across the street will be a brand new Lincoln Elementary School with its own sustainable features as well. So I think that it would actually complement the neighborhood. The property in question cannot yield a reasonable return or reasonable enjoyment issue. I have one of those backyards that has the western facing exposure in the afternoon, and the struggle is real to enjoy a backyard with that exposure, with that harsh afternoon sun. So, our yard is often rendered unusable on those really hot days. But, I think that there are other options. As Commissioner Callaway pointed out, they've really maxed out their solar capacity on their roof, and this home is already on the leading edge of being sustainable in Elmhurst in terms of, what homeowners have done. And I would just like to see the homeowner kind of scale back these plans or try to seek some other solutions. So, I'm struggling with this because I want to say yes. I like that the sustainability aspect of it, and it aligns with our comprehensive plan. And, we say in our comprehensive plan that we should encourage small scale energy production systems for residential structures. And I think that what they're proposing is unique and would be a good trend setting for Elmhurst. But, that 30% lot coverage rule, I think it's a really high bar for us to clear. And I'm just, I'm not sure I'm all the way there with this particular petition. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner McCoy, I know you had a question right earlier on and said it was for deliberation. So you're muted. Commissioner McCoy, you're muted.
Okay.
There you go.
I'm on? Okay. I agreed with both what Commissioner Callaway and Commissioner Snyder said about the first criteria. The sunlight is not unique. So sunlight's out everywhere. So that's not unique. The other thing that has sort of bothered me is this: when you build a structure on a piece of property almost to the limits that can be done, and then all of a sudden you want to add a little something here or add a little something there. I know we've had a couple other issues where we've gone from, 30.1% or, I have a problem with that. I'm like, if we say 30%, we really have to pay attention to that. It's there for a reason. So those were the things I had wanted to say. Especially though the first one, I did not feel that the unique circumstances of that property is not the sunlight, because everyone has sunlight in their backyard. So. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Pittman.
Thank you, Chair Rose. I mentioned earlier I was struggling with the first criteria, and while I do appreciate that this is a unique situation in terms of what they're asking and that we have not addressed a solar canopy, I do feel that that is an issue that we need to take up in the zoning code and not look at this as a one-off piecemeal approval for something. I think it needs to be addressed. I think there needs to be design standards. I definitely think we need to look at it, and we need to look at it fast, because I suspect this is not going to be the first person in town who wants to do something like this. So I do think it's important as a commission that we do look at this and look at it closely. But I don't think that I can vote in favor of this, because I do not think it meets the criteria, and we have to look at those things. We've got lot coverage that's almost maxed out. Our zoning code dictates that this structure would increase that, and we have to follow those rules. I don't think it meets criteria number one. Criteria number two, honestly, I think that's where the design standards and more information about these canopies comes into place, because there are drawings included, but I'm not an expert on these solar canopies, and I'd like to see more detail as to how it would look so that I could make a determination on whether it would be something that might affect the character of the neighborhood. I agree with Commissioner Snyder. It is a modern home, and this is, more of a modern type of canopy, and it would fit in with the home. The neighborhood itself, I'm not sure. Criteria number three, I really don't think that there's an argument that can be made that they can't enjoy their backyard without this. There are plenty of other options out there. There's trees, there's changing their patio to pavers, there's using an umbrella like most people in town do. And the reasons for seeking the relief, I understand light sensitivity, but you've got kids, they're gonna play in the yard, they're not gonna be playing just under the canopy. I really don't see a lot in the application that's pushing me to vote in favor of this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Uditsky.
Yeah, I think I agree with all the commissioners so far and don't want to belabor the point, but what really sort of sends it over the edge for me is the fact that it seems this is already addressed in the code. I think Eileen was saying you couldn't do like a pergola with a pulled canvas cover on it, and I just don't see that this is any different than that. Certainly, in my opinion anyway, it doesn't meet the standards. It's not really a unique circumstance, and I don't think we need to go through those again, but I do agree with Commissioner Pittman in particular that this is something, I'm all for this. I think it's it's a great idea, right? But it's not necessarily something that I think we can approve, based on the standards. Really has to be addressed in the code, because if you could do this with the solar panels, why can't you do, a canopy that's not, say, solar panels, right? I mean, as Commissioner Snyder indicated, I too have a west-facing backyard. It gets extremely, hot in the afternoons. I would love to have a canopy, right, where we can pull something, up. But in the meantime, as Commissioner Pittman indicated, you have to go with, other options, as as most people are. So in summary, I just don't see that we meet the standards, but I do think it's a great idea and something that should be addressed in the code.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? Okay. I'll just lend a very brief voice to this. I am in agreement with those who say the first criterion is not met. I don't really see anything unique in this situation. I asked about, in particular, light sensitive. Was there something that the residents were more light sensitive than others or had a medical condition? That was not the case. I think that to say what is unique about it is what I'm going to put up is unique. I don't think is really what this criterion, that's not the interpretation that I would put on this. So that you could say, if I was going to put up a hoop house, I'd say, well, that's really unique and that's sustainable. So that's the uniqueness. That we've talked about this and we really rejected that particular argument. So I think that's a real issue that that when criterion number one is not met, it really poses problems for the other two criteria. So I'll just address myself to number three, and I really want to say Commissioner Garland spoke to this, Commissioner Pittman, about there are other options. There have been other options that I just don't see that they were pursued in a way that would make me come to the conclusion that they have no other choice but this. So I cannot support this as well. So any other further discussion? If not, I will ask Eileen Franz to please call the roll.
Thank you. And I have that Commissioner Callaway made the motion and Commissioner Snyder seconded. And just a reminder that the motion is in the affirmative. Our motions are always in the affirmative. Okay, Commissioner Callaway.
Yes. I'm sorry. I got confused when you said in the affirmative.
Sorry.
No.
Commissioner Garland.
No.
Commissioner Hoffman.
No.
Commissioner McCoy.
No.
Commissioner Pittman.
No.
Commissioner Snyder.
No.
Commissioner Uditsky.
No.
Chair Rose.
No. The recommendation of Zoning and Planning Commission to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee will be to not approve this. This is, as you know, this is a 3-stage process. So the next step is that it goes to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee. I would like to make one comment that I think these issues, as some noted, these are policy issues that I think are best handled really by the City Council. If the City Council really chooses to raise our lot coverage from 30 to some other number, that is a policy decision. And that is not the purview of this commission to make that. And the second item, however, is we can make some recommendation. We're going to be reviewing all our zoning codes in this next year. Eileen will be giving us a thing, and I think it will be important for us to say this is something that was not anticipated in previous zoning codes and probably should be looked at in this zoning code to make really as things are changing. So the hope for the future is, and I'll tell this to the applicant, that things, as you eloquently put, things change, and things may change in Elmhurst as well, but it will not be, it may not be tomorrow. So just so everyone is aware of that. So thank you, and good luck to you. We'll go to the DP&Z when, Eileen?
February, I believe it's February 8th. February 8th.
February, okay. Development Planning and Zoning Committee of the Elmhurst City Council. And from there, it will go to the full City Council. So good luck to you. So.
And if I could just make one comment, these types of structures are something that we already have on the list to be reviewed in the comprehensive zoning ordinance update. And that was a project we started last year that was put on hold due to the pandemic, but we are going to be restarting that soon. So this is something that we are going to be looking at, because in 1992, these types of structures were not something that were really contemplated.
Can't catch you sleeping, Eileen, on that one. I know that you are looking at that, so that's great. So thanks very much, everyone. Okay, we will now move on to the next case, case number 4.03, 20 ZBA 13. I don't know if it's Janowski or Janowski variation. So I will ask Eileen, you are handling this one?
Yes, I am handling this one.
Okay, will you please introduce this case to us?
Thank you. This is case 20 ZBA 13. The application was filed December 17th, 2020. The applicant is requesting variations from the lot area requirement. The applicant is Agnes Janowski, who's also the owner of the property. The legal notice was published January 7th, 2021. The sign was posted January 8th, 2021, and the mailing was sent out January 7th, 2021, which brings us to the public hearing this evening, January 26th, 2021. I do have one comment I want to make beforehand. This is a situation where the property is made up of 2 lots of record from a subdivision that was platted several years ago, and we have a provision in our code that when you have 2 non-conforming lots in common ownership that are used as a zoning lot, you do need a variation if you want to build on those lots separately. So that is what the applicant is requesting. The home and the garage on the lot right now were built many years ago, and there are no, none of our current stormwater requirements that are in place for properties are in place on this property. And it's my understanding that there is some flooding that does occur kind of localized right in this area in the immediate vicinity around this property. I did talk to our city engineer, and if the variations are approved and the applicant does build 2 homes on the lots, each one of those lots will have to meet all of our current requirements for stormwater management. They will have to put in the vaults for the storage. They will have to compensate for up to 60% impervious on the lot. But in addition, there is our engineer did say there's a possibility of also adding a larger pipe on the south lot to assist with some of the flooding in the neighboring on the neighboring properties' backyards. Unfortunately, this is a variation. This is not something we really can condition as part of this case. It's really just the lot area variation that the commission is looking at. But I did speak to the applicant's husband about the situation. He has already spoken to our city engineer, and he did indicate that he would be willing to work with our engineering department to possibly install this pipe or figure out a way to improve the situation. So I just wanted to explain that before we turn this over to the applicant.
Commissioner Callaway, you had a comment or a question?
Yeah, I just want to make sure I understand Eileen's comment. So Eileen, if 2 homes are then built on these lots, and I know the concern is particularly with the south lot, would consideration for that larger pipe, would that be part of the plan approval process then?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I'm going to give it to the applicant at this point. But I want the applicant who will be speaking. Mr. Janowski, I am aware that you were not sworn in. I didn't see you raise your hand. Did you?
No, I didn't. I was not sworn in.
Okay, we'll have to swear you in then. Can you please, anyone else who wishes to speak on this case or any other case, could you please be sworn in at this time? Is there anyone else? Okay, I think you did, Ms. Wilson, but go ahead.
Well, I wasn't sure if you counted me or not.
I saw your hand, but go right ahead. We'll do you again. So, okay. Kiki, can you please swear in?
Sure. Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony that you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Janowski, did you say I do?
I do.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let me hand it to the applicant, Ms. Janowski. Is it Janowski? Am I saying? Okay. Mm-hmm. Tell us what's on your mind here.
So we bought this lot, which was originally platted as 2 lots, number 10 and 11. We live in unincorporated part of Elmhurst. We enjoyed the city for many years, but wanted to move closer to high school, to Prairie Path, enjoy the neighborhood with sidewalks as Washington Street offers those options. Again, this lot was originally plotted as 2 lots, okay? We would like to divide it, build a house on 1 lot, enjoy the other one while it lasts. It will be our future investment, but as of right now, we would like to make sure that we have 2 lots in possession before starting the construction. The house that will be built there will be obviously a new construction house, very similar to houses in the same lot, in the same block. There are a few new construction houses, but the house that is there right now is older, is kind of out of character. As Eileen mentioned, there's no drainage in the lot at all. Obviously, we would build the new construction house up to the codes and requirements of the city. My husband spoke to the engineer from Public Works, and we did have a conversation about the bigger pipe on the south side of the lot, which would take all the water to the sewer. All the lots right on this block are about 50 feet wide. This one is 100 feet wide. Okay, so the house that we will build right now, and the second one sometime in the future, or if a new owner may build a house there as well, that will make both of the houses will look pretty similar to the to the block as it is right now. We would never. I've listened to the previous case when you were concerned about the coverage of the footprint of the house and the coverage that the house will take with relation to the original lot. Obviously, again, since we are going up to the codes, we would not build a bigger house than it's actually allowed.
Anything else?
I think that's it.
Okay, great. Let me ask first if there's anyone in this virtual meeting who would like to give public testimony or any public comments on this particular case.
I would. Oh,
Ms. Wilson.
Go ahead.
Ms. Wilson.
I was the second one to say something. Somebody else spoke first.
Is Christy Kolsky first?
Yes, I would like to say something. I am on the south side of the house that is right there now. I know that my house takes in quite a bit of water from the storms. Actually, I have water coming in my basement right now just because of the snow melting as of yesterday. My house is a small house. It's just a ranch. To the south of me is a big house. Behind me, to the east of me, is a big house. My yard takes up so much water. I mean, my garage floods. I just don't know how many more of these big homes could possibly go on our lots on this block. Our block has tons of big homes. It's just really kind of overbearing with the homes that we have now. I'm just concerned about water intake. I'm concerned about the look of my house just being crowded. I don't know how much more closer a house can get to mine. It's just a lot, it seems like. Our lots aren't very big, to take up all of this space.
Okay, anything else you want to say, or is that it?
That's it.
Thank you. Ms. Wilson.
Okay, first of all, I'm going to summarize the written testimony that I sent in earlier and maybe then make a couple comments, but I will keep it well under the 5 minutes. I wrote in regard to building onto this lot at 671 South Washington, and my concerns are valid whether it remains as one or becomes two lots. I'm concerned about the potential for flooding. Having lived next door for 17 years, I live on the north side of the lot. I've seen this property flood every time we have heavy continuous rains of 4 to 6 inches or more. The water pools throughout the property at 671 South Washington and extends onto the properties behind them on Euclid and onto the property at 120 West McKinley, which is my property. It takes days for this water to drain, and I know for a fact we have to pump out our backyard. It often doesn't drain on its own. I have pictures of the problem that's been documented many times over the years. I'm concerned about any owner that would purchase this property. You know, the previous owner had a lot of basement flooding. They had steps going down into their basement from outdoors, and so water would get in there. After the big flood of 2010, he filled in those steps, and I think he was able to keep the flooding mostly to the yard at that point, but that is a smaller home and it doesn't have window wells. Any current construction home that would be built there with any type of window well is just going to take in water just every time it rains. So I'm concerned about that, but I'm also concerned about the nearby properties. Mine, the Kolskis, the ones on Euclid behind, because if you add a bigger house, you're going to remove more permeable ground to soak up the water, especially if you had 2 basements. And any more concrete on this land is going to push the water somewhere else. The water needs to go somewhere. This is overland flooding. This is not sewer issue. So I don't fully understand, Eileen, what you were talking about with the additional pipe, but that sounded like a sewer solution to me. And this is definitely overland flooding. Now, I'm not against building, but I just feel like whatever's done to this property, whether it's 1 lot or 2 lots, it needs to be engineered and reviewed to make sure that the flooding is handled first. And I guess my concern, I read the request for variance, and in that request, it says the applicant is required to meet all applicable requirements for stormwater management. Well, I've lived on Washington for 17 years, and I know the management that's been done, but I don't know of any management that handles this overland flooding. So maybe I would love to know if there is something that's already in place. If there is not, I strongly urge the city to require that before there's any building done on this lot. Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else in this? Just turn your microphone. I'm going to ask you to mute your microphone. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else in this virtual meeting who would like to give public testimony on this case? Okay, let me go to the public comment room. Mike, is there anyone in that room who'd like to give testimony?
No, there's not.
All right, Emily and Eileen, could you please see if either by email or voicemail we have any member of the public who would like to give testimony on this case?
There are no voicemails for public comment, Chair Rose.
And there are no emails.
Okay, then let me turn to the commission for questions, comments of the applicant. Any commissioner have any questions or comments that they want to make? Commissioner Pittman.
Yes, thank you, Chair Rose. I just wanted to ask the applicant and make sure I understood correctly. So your plan is to build 1 house on 1 lot and leave the other one open for now?
Yes, for now it will be 1 house. And again, we will meet the requirements of the, when it comes to coverage or the footprint of the house with relation to the lot.
Okay, thank you.
The other commissioner. Okay, Commissioner Garland.
And perhaps this is, thanks, Chair Rose, perhaps this is for city staff. So that these are 2 lots of record, 2 houses could have been built, or a house on each lot could have been built at that time when they were subdivided or when they became lots of record.
That is correct.
And if then somebody wanted to, in that instance, if there were 2 houses and somebody wanted to rebuild and met the lot coverage requirements, et cetera, they could rebuild on those lots, those 2 lots.
That is correct. If they were currently improved with homes, separate owners and everything, yes.
So the existing home that's on there today, I'm just looking for some clarification on what will be different from a stormwater management perspective when a home is rebuilt, or when the home is rebuilt, or 2 homes are there that's not there today that would otherwise perhaps mitigate the issues that the neighbors are suggesting are out there.
Okay, I am not probably the best person to speak to this, but when you build a new home in Elmhurst, and I'd be happy to get some more clarification from our city engineer for you. A couple of years ago, there were new requirements approved by the city council for anytime you add impervious surface to your property, whether it's a new home, whether it's just a small patio on the back of your property. When you build a new home now in Elmhurst, you have to provide stormwater management facilities to compensate for up to 60% impervious on the lot, even if you are in this particular district, even if you are not building up to 60%. So, we have our building coverage requirement of 30%, and then we have an impervious surface requirement of 60% that is part of the building code. That is not something that really ever comes before this commission. So anytime you build a new home now in Elmhurst, even if you're not going to build to 60% impervious, you have to provide the stormwater management for up to 60%. So that is going to mean they're going to have to build the underground vault to, hold the water and slowly release it for both of those lots. And if they built one home on one of those lots, they would still have to put those put that in to meet those requirements. And I don't know, Mike, if there's anything you want to add to what I'm saying, or if you think that kind of covers it.
That was accurate. They have to provide for up to 60% impervious coverage on R2 lot. Right. If they're not covering 60%, they have to provide for the stormwater, so there's no release greater than what was currently impervious, up to 60% impervious. So it'll fill up this underground vault that Eileen spoke about, and there'll be a release from there to our stormwater sewer system. So right now it's a direct sheet drain off of that property to our stormwater system. What this does is it holds the water until this underground vault or whatever. They can do whatever. There's a bunch of different options as long as you provide for storage up to 60% impervious on the lot prior to being released to our storm sewer.
And is it safe to say, either Mike or Eileen, that would make the circumstances better than what they are today?
It should.
The 7,260 foot minimum lot area, when did that requirement go into effect?
It's been at least since 1992.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
So the vaulting you're talking about, that would meet, I'm just curious, that would meet the definition of overland stormwater management? Would that do, That's
correct. That's what it's for.
Okay. And in looking at the Plata survey, it appears that if on the east-west side of this lot, okay, if they had an additional 4 feet, 4.44 feet, 4.54 feet, they would not have to come for variances. Would that be correct? Because they're currently at 144.46 feet. So if they were 50 feet by 150 feet, that would meet the requirement, and there would be no variance required. Is that correct?
Yes.
Because these are already, these were plotted as 2 lots.
Right.
So it's this 4.5 feet that is the problem on the back end of this. And one last question I want to make sure I understand, so that if they were to build a house on one of these lots, they would have to put a vault on both of the lots at the same time. Is that correct?
No, I mean, if they were going to build only one house, they would only, I mean, if they were building only one house, they would only have to do the vault for that particular house. But if they added a second house in the future, then that house would also have to do the, like if this was approved and they did just like the north lot now, they would have to do it for that lot. And then in the future, if a house was built on the southern lot, at that time, the vault would have to be added.
So the builder, whoever would build on that other one would build it.
Right.
Okay. I didn't ask the applicant, but I'm curious, if this variance were to be recommended, which lot are you thinking you are going to build on?
I think the south one first.
The south one.
The of the house. Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right. Other questions from commissioners about this? Commissioner Pittman.
One other question for Eileen. I was curious, the 7,260 square feet, they're very close. Both lots are very close to that 7,260. Do you know the other lots on that block and whether they're all falling a little bit short of that number, or are they all meeting that number? Do you have that information?
So I do have some of that information. So it does appear that, okay, so they're lots 10 and 11. Lots 7, 8, and 9, which are to the south, have the same dimensions, and then the properties to the east are also the same dimensions as the lots on Washington. And it also looks like on the west side of Washington as well. The corner lots, though, are a little bigger. The lots on the corners are slightly larger.
Okay, thank you very much.
Good question, Commissioner Pittman. Any other, Commissioner Snyder?
Yeah, and this is just, I think, really maybe a point of clarification. So they're perfectly entitled to build one brand new home on the lot, on both lots now, as if it was a single lot, as it is, meeting the 30% coverage requirement, 60% impervious limit, right? So subdividing these lots doesn't change those percentages. And what I'm getting at is, in either case, if we're doing the math and you're just taking, to make the math simple, a 10,000 square foot lot, 60% of that would be 6,000. And if you're dividing that in 2 to 5,000 square lots, that's each 3,000 square feet. So it's really it's all the same. We're not really changing the capacity to manage the stormwater by granting this variance, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Questions from any other commissioner? Okay. Seeing none, I will then close the public hearing at this point, unless the applicant, do you have anything else you want to add to this?
No, thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, we will then close the public hearing. Again, it's our procedure that we would move to deliberation the same night, unless any commissioner believes that they need additional time or additional evidence that they want to think about this. So let me first ask if anyone on the commission objects to deliberation this evening. Okay, seeing none, I would like to ask for a motion and a second to approve the variation requested at 671 South Washington. A motion and a second. Commissioner Garland moves.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. A second? Commissioner Uditsky. All right. Mr. Garland, let me hand it to you.
Notwithstanding the comments from the neighbors, and can fully appreciate that, but I'm looking at this as reasonably straightforward. But I think that given that the lots, the plight of the owner, and you've got a number of lots, based on the response of Commissioner Pittman's question, that are similar size and just short, perhaps on the back end in terms of the depth of the lot, that and that the lots are subdivided today, or two lots of record, I should say, today, and that two homes could have been built on those lots, and homes could be rebuilt on that lot in those instances, and that we're looking at similar lot types of coverage. And with the stormwater remediation efforts that will be required, that these efforts, I think, would go a long way to hopefully helping to mitigate some of the challenges. But I think that there is in my mind, there is a clear plight of the owner in that it is due to some unique circumstances. I don't believe, as you drive the neighborhood, that it will alter the character of the neighborhood. There's some newer homes in there. There's a mix of newer and older homes that I believe that two new homes here on these two lots wouldn't dramatically alter the character. And that there are, and this is where I always have a little bit of a challenge, but I think that while a reasonable return, the property in question cannot yield a reasonable return. I think that what the applicant is looking to do in terms of split the lots and that are already subdivided today, and put one home up on one lot and perhaps have another home built on the other lot. I think that the scenario as it sits today, with the lots just short of the required size, I think that this particular condition has been met as well. So I would put in for approval on this.
Thank you. Commissioner Uditsky.
Yes, I would approve it as well. I think just a quick side note to Commissioner Garland's comments is, we don't necessarily always have to meet every standard exactly, and the reasonable return standard always bothers me because it's completely subjective. So just that comment, but I do think it's wholly appropriate. I mean, this single parcel, right, was originally contemplated as two separate lots. We're talking about extremely minor variation. There are plenty of other 50-foot lots in the neighborhood that have been improved with new homes. I think, as Commissioner Snyder, I think it was indicated, that when you really break it down, when they have to comply with the 30% requirement and do all the, stormwater mitigation, that to a certain extent it's the same as a larger lot, as it is with two separate lots. So I think that they've, for the most part, met the standards. I think it's appropriate for the neighborhood, and it's such a minor, variation that it seems appropriate to me.
Thank you. Commissioner Pitt, did you have a comment you wanted to make, or?
I will.
But
I agree with both Commissioner Garland and Commissioner Uditsky. I think it would be a different story if the lots weren't 2 lots of record originally, and if you didn't have numerous examples of lots who are falling just shy of the 7,260 that came into play in the 90s. You know, I'm not quite sure what the reason was for even needing to come in for the variation and why this wasn't a, you know, back in the 90s decided to be a grandfather case in this area, but that's beside the point. I do think that it's an appropriate request. It's a unique circumstance. I think that it fits with the character of the neighborhood. I think the stormwater issues that are plaguing the area, they're not going to be resolved by these 2 homes being built, but I certainly don't think the issue will get worse. I do think it will get better because of the requirements for the vaults. And the question regarding the reasonable return, again, I think you've got 2 lots of record that have existed, and that this is a reasonable request for the owner to ask for. So I would approve it.
Thank you. Any other commissioner? Commissioner Snyder.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that all of the objections that I read on board docs really had to do with stormwater. And I agree with all the things that my fellow commissioners have just stated, but I just wanted to point out, I really think there's great opportunity to improve the circumstance in terms of flooding here and address those concerns that were posted as being a reason for objection. So I also will be supporting this.
Thank you. Any other commissioner? Yeah, I'll just make a comment. I really have a lot of empathy really with neighbors around overland flooding. I think it's a, you know, it's really it's a blight, and it's, you know, we've all struggled with that. But I will say, and this is anecdotal, our backyard used to be a lake, just a lake, and so did our neighbors, until that house was torn down and a new one was put up and a vault was put in. And we have not experienced that kind of flooding. So I would never, I'm a huge proponent of these vaults because I see that they actually do work. So is that going to be the 100% solution to this? No, because there's lots of other stuff that's going on. But I do agree with commissioners who, in their judgment, believe that this is a step in improving that. And I know it's hard to, when you're a neighbor and you're seeing that, it's like, well, look, where's all this water coming from? But my guess is that it will. So I would support this as well. So, any other comments? Seeing none, I'll ask Eileen Franz to please call the roll.
Thank you. Commissioner Garland?
Yes.
Commissioner Uditsky?
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway?
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman?
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy?
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman?
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder?
Yes.
Chair Rose?
We will then forward a recommendation to approve this variance to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee of the City Council. And that will be on the 8th. Is that correct, Eileen?
Actually, this is a variation that the commission has the final authority on. So.
All of a sudden I thought that as well. So really this is, Ms. Janowski, your application for a variance does not need to go to the Development Planning and Zoning Committee or to the full City Council. It actually is approved as of tonight. And so you should be able to start to the process for yourself from this point on. So we wish you all the best of luck in what you plan to do. So, and the neighborhood, we wish all of you luck. So
thank you very much.
Okay, great. We'll move on to the next case. Case number 20 ZBA 14, the La Polla or is La Polla?
It's the Italian version. It's La Polla. Well, technically La Polla, but the American version is La Polla.
La Polla.
So, hello, everyone, and thank you for your time.
Moment, let me move on at this point. So what we will do, I need to hand this over to the staff for their introduction before you say. You'll get your say in just a moment, but let me hand it. They need to read into the record some of the specifics of this. Eileen, is it you?
Thank you. This is case 20 ZBA 14. The application was filed December 21st, 2020. The request is a variation from the corner side yard setback requirement of 10 feet to 5 feet. The applicants are Leslie and James LaPala. They are the owners of the property. The legal notice was published January 7th, 2021. The sign was posted January 8th, 2021. The mailing was sent out January 7th, 2021, which brings us to the public hearing this evening, January 26th, 2021.
Okay. And Ms. LaPala, I know you were sworn in because I saw your hand go up and you were sworn in, so we don't need to do that. So now I'm going to hand it to you and ask you to give us an idea what it is you're looking for and tell us anything that you think is really important in your request for a variation.
Thank you very much. And thanks everyone for listening. I know that's difficult. So the major goal tonight is actually just to change the setback rules for one side of the property. And if you want or care to look at your first document, you'll see that the lot in question, 305 Cayuga, is a pie-shaped lot. And if you imagine where does the corner exist, at first glance, there doesn't look to be a corner, and but the corner technically would exist at the southeast point. And so the left side of that corner is actually on the street, and the right side of that corner is parallels the sidewalk that goes to the viaduct under the train tracks. So the line that we would like to change is the right-hand side one, the one next to the sidewalk, to make the setback be 5 feet instead of the required 10 feet for a corner lot. So you're looking at somewhat of what I looked at when I first discovered this lot. I live out of state and I looked on Zillow and I found this beautiful lot and I'm thinking, oh my goodness, how could it not have been bought by now? And so anyway, but I made myself come to Elmhurst in person in September to look at it before I'd allowed myself to bid on the lot. So anyway, of course, when I got there, it was beautiful and I wanted to buy it. But my sister, who's a resident of Elmhurst, warned me. She said, if that lot is so good, why hasn't some builder bought it and put it in his inventory or her inventory? And so she, I thought she's right. We have to see if a house will fit on that lot because I did see that it was a pie-shaped lot. So I actually contacted an architect that she was familiar with and we submitted a house plan. And of course, a whole huge hunk of it overlapped on the right-hand side and it was a no-go. So then I Googled 50-foot wide houses and it was the same story. Big block house would overlap and not fit into the pie. So anyway, that was the goal, is to change that one side requirement. So the unique circumstance that is one of your criteria is that it doesn't look like a corner lot, but it has the designation of a corner lot. And you can see that that street poplar comes up, and then when it crosses the street to the north side, it becomes a sidewalk. And then after the viaduct up near the school, it becomes a street again. So there's actually a gap in there, and I guess they considered a road. I can't remember the technical terminology, but it's a right-of-way. So as an out-of-stater looking on Zillow and even driving by it, it looks like it's just another plot right along the street. Bing, bing, bing. No corner there other than the poplar appears to kind of make a T there at that intersection. So, all right, well, let me see what I was going to say. that when you talk about the character of the request that we're making for that neighborhood, well, the setback, I guess, was technically supposed to be 25 feet, but as it turned out, when the architect had drawn up a set of plans that would work on that lot, what he essentially did was he took the house we liked and he chopped off the right-hand third of it. He cut it off and literally moved it to the left side of the plans and made it a half-story house over on the left side. So that's how he would actually fulfill our needs and requirements, yet still fit within the pie-shaped lot. It turns out, though, that even though the technical requirement for setback is 25 feet, it turned out that when the engineer looked at the neighborhood, the average there was like 31.1 feet. So the architect actually moved the building back further. And so in that respect, the setback would be conducive with the other homes in the neighborhood. So that would help it to blend in. And then, let's see what else. The size of the house was about 2,600 square feet. It was not a gargantuan mansion or anything that was going to stand out. It would blend in nicely with the other houses in the area. So that was, I think that the average, the setback, the size of the house, I don't think it would really be that drastically different. We sent out a letter to 17 neighbors in the vicinity. And if you want to look on the documents, and it's called Neighbors Letters, you will see that there's an aerial view of that area. And I know it's a little bit hard to see, but the teardrop is where our lot is. And then the X's, the red X's that are crossed on top of the properties around it, are the ones that we received letters of support. To my knowledge, there were no negatives. I believe that the other 4 houses were not home when my sister went to get the letters. So 13 out of the 17 were supportive. And when you look at that map too, you'd say, who would be impacted the most by this change? And so you'd look at, to me, the house on the west won't be able to see it. The house to the south across the street, they're supportive. Then on a diagonal to the southeast, that house was one of the ones that was not home. And well, actually the house that's to the direct east, it appears that they were not home either. But those 3 houses, I think, would have been the most impacted by any change, because that change would only occur on the eastern side of the house, not on the south side. And then when I talk about, let's see here, the financial detriment if this were not to go through. Well, let me see here. Let me back up just a trace and go back to your documents if you care to, and look at the site plan. And you will see what the architect had to go through to, actually it's the plans, pardon me, it's the plans. You will see in the lower left corner, the site plan, that's what it is. And you see that it turned out when the architect resubmitted his plans to the engineer that they work with, he said, oh, guess what? You're a corner lot. You have to be set back. Well, even to make it within 5 feet, look at the right-hand side of that building, right behind the garage going toward the north. You'll see 3 little diagonal lines, and it's almost as if the architect had to take scissors and cut the tips of the buildings off in 3 spots just to get it to fit within the 5-foot rule setback. So this is the point that we had gotten to. And when the architect reconsulted with the engineer said, oh, yeah, by the way, you're a corner lot. You have to be set back 10 feet on that side. So this is where we come to in your last criteria is what would the detriment be if it didn't get passed? And number one is I think that it would not be a buildable lot for us. It wouldn't make sense. And I felt that I sort of had gone through the motions to make sure that this was not the case when we were considering buying the lot, waiting, looking at it, then seeing if something would fit. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Now devise a plan that would. Now that theoretically would. Now we're there by the skin of our teeth. And you can see that, we're up to like the 29.99% of total coverage. So we don't have a lot of room to go. So I think that it would be an unbuildable lot. I actually think it would be an unsellable lot. I don't know if anybody would buy it. And I have to point out that this corner lot designation was never brought up by the seller's agent, the seller. It wasn't brought up. And I actually requested a survey before the closing, even though that was going to be given to me at closing, just so that I could move along with the process. Well, little did I know, I had bigger worries. And as it turns out, when you look at the survey, which is another one of your documents, I personally didn't see anything on there that says corner lot. So it's the plat on your set of documents. So like when I see that it says Poplar Avenue, and then you see the sidewalk to the east of the house, but I don't really see it being designated a corner lot. So I think not only would it not meet our needs at a 2,600 square foot home, it wouldn't be buildable for us, and it wouldn't be sellable, because the next person coming along would confront these same issues, much to their chagrin. So I think in essence, that is my point, and I'm certainly open to questions.
Okay.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Let me open it up to questions from the commission. Any commissioner have a question? Snyder. And then Commissioner McCoy.
Thank you. So I'm just curious about the home that used to exist there. Do you know how many square feet that home was? And do you know if that home had met the setback requirement?
Well, to tell you the truth, I Googled it because I was dying to find out what had been there. And I personally couldn't find it, but I think in the documents I've received from the city of Elmhurst, they show that there was something torn down in 2007. What that is, I do not know. And like the report said that there was no foundation or evidence of, like cement, so I don't have a clue. To tell you the truth, I think what it's been being used for is, now this is all hearsay, it's all Google researched, that perhaps it was used as a meditation garden, because you see that there's like little winding sidewalks, and there's like little flower beds interspersed around the periphery, and there might even be a bench, I'm not sure, but I think it was used for meditation, etc. I believe that the prior owner was just to the west of that lot.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner McCoy. You're muted.
Oh, there you go.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Chair Rose. Who owns the property, directly east?
I do not know.
Is that, does anyone on staff know?
Yeah, so directly east, it actually is Poplar right of way.
Okay, so
even though Poplar is not improved, so it's right of way. It's like it's an unimproved street.
So who maintains it?
I believe we do.
Okay, so the city maintains that particular piece of property.
Mm-hmm. And it's where the underpass is to go to Jefferson School.
So if the city has the right of way, is it possible that a certain portion of that property could be sold to the applicant?
I mean, in theory, yes, there is a sidewalk there that would have to be relocated. There would be a price to that. So I don't, that's something that would have to go before city council.
Okay, thank you.
Pardon me, from what I've heard, it's a major thoroughfare to the elementary school.
Right.
Yeah.
Any other commissioner have any questions or comments they want to make? Okay. I'm going to ask Emily and Eileen to please check and see if there is anyone, voicemail or email, in the public who wants to make comments. And while they're doing it, is there anybody else on this virtual meeting who would like to make a public comment around this? Seeing none. Mike, let me ask you, is there anyone in the public comment room who'd like to make a comment?
No, there's not.
Okay, Eileen and Emily.
There are no voicemails for public comment.
Eileen?
Sorry, I got knocked out. I have to log back in.
Okay, we'll wait.
No emails.
Okay. Commissioner McCoy, you're muted. There you go. Now you're muted. I'm sorry.
It doesn't say that on my screen. Thank you, Chair Rose. So is this a buildable lot or not? According to the city, is it a buildable lot?
I mean, yeah, it meets the minimum area and minimum lot width to be built on.
Okay, thank you.
Right, yeah, it meets the area, it's the dimensions, right? So, okay. I will then close unless there's any more comments from commissioners, I will close the public hearing at this point. Commissioner Hoffman?
Thanks, Chair Rose. I guess just a quick question of city staff. Are there any other similar instances of this in the city that you're aware of?
So I know we had a similar lot up in Growy Woods where there's a road that is right of way but unimproved, where they had to meet the 10-foot setback even though the road didn't go through. As far as the shape of the lot, last year, it might be right before you were on the commission, we did have a variation across the street where someone has also like a triangular shaped lot for a side setback. But we definitely, I can't remember, it's not, I can't remember, Sydney. I think it's Sydney up in Growy Woods that is right of way but unimproved.
Yeah, and I remember the one that we did really right around here in Cayuga. It was over a year ago that we did that. It was very similar. So, any other questions? Anyone else? Commissioner Garland.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Rose. Perhaps this is for you, Eileen. The 25-foot setback, front yard setback that's required, and I should probably know this, so forgive me to the other commissioners, but what I heard was that the setback for this house would be the average setback along the street, or is it the 25 foot setback that's in the code?
So how it works is it's 25 feet or the average of the block, whichever is greater. So it's greater in this case.
Okay, thank you. Now I know it. I won't ask that again. So
you can ask it again. So, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, I will now close the public hearing. We'd like to move to deliberate this evening unless there is anyone on the commission who objects to deliberation and would prefer to wait for a later date for whatever reason. Okay. Seeing none, what I need then is a motion to approve the variation as requested and a second. Commissioner Uditsky moves to approve, and can we have a second for that? Commissioner Pittman, thank you. Commissioner Uditsky.
Yeah, thank you. So just really quick going through the standards here. It is a unique circumstance. You know, the shape of the lot is unique. Over the years, we've addressed, I think, similar issues, perhaps not with a corner lot, but certainly with irregular shaped lots. So I think the applicant meets that standard. The variation, if granted, will not alter the character of the neighborhood. You know, certainly, and I think the plans showing the home and where it's located as well, just along kind of that unimproved right-of-way where it's not a street. Certainly you have kids probably walking, through there, but, they're going to build something that appears to be in line with other homes in the area. The property in question cannot yield a reasonable return. As I indicated in one of the prior cases, I mean, these are sort of wholly subjective, right? What does reasonable return actually mean? But, awfully tough to build a sort of usable modern home with the 10-foot setback on the side yard. So, and just stepping back, from the standards for a minute, I think that, where this home is located, given that it is an unimproved right-of-way, public right-of-way along the side yard that they're looking for the variance on, doesn't really, affect anyone. Nobody, well, there was one objection, I guess, but the number of people in support of it, I think outweighs that. The objection was really just stick to the rules, I think was the objection there. So I think that they've met the standards. I think it's wholly appropriate given the location, what they're planning to build. So, for those reasons, I'd be in favor of it.
Thank you. Commissioner Pittman?
Thank you, Chair Rose. I agree with everything Commissioner Uditsky said. I also think that all three conditions are met. I believe that, some relief is needed in order to produce a usable home on this site. They're not looking to build some enormous house. 2,600 square feet is a modest size house in Elmhurst, and that is, maximizing where they can place this house on that lot. I think that it would be a tough sell, this lot, trying to make that 10-foot setback work. Likely why it's been vacant for a long time. So I think that it really doesn't affect anybody because of the adjacent right-of-way where you just have a sidewalk and some green space, and the kids are using it as a cut through under the train to get to Jefferson. So I don't think it affects anybody except that it helps the current owner be able to have a usable home, which I think will add to the neighborhood. And I think those are good things. So I'm in favor of it.
Any other comments from commissioners? Commissioner Snyder?
Yeah, I just wanted to comment in terms of the unimproved public right-of-way being Poplar Street. I don't think that there's any opportunity or real possibility of Poplar Street being constructed connecting the south portion to the portion north of the railroad track. So, I feel like the designation of this lot as a corner lot is really technical in nature and doesn't really, the reality is it doesn't have the feeling or appearance of being a corner lot at all. It's a little unusual in terms of having that bump out where all of those streets intersect, but in terms of it being a corner lot, I really feel that's just a technicality that doesn't actually align with what the reality for the use is here. So I would support this.
Great. Anyone else? I would support this as well. I personally think that they met all three of the criteria. I think the first thing, there's something very unique about this. The shape of the lot, is always an issue, and the fact that it abuts against really this right of way, but not a street. I think that is very unique, and we've seen by a number of cases that have come in this area. We're going to see, if you just look at this this aerial view, you're just going to see some issues with that. So I think they certainly did. I think the second one, which is, if the variance was not granted, I don't think that they could build a house that would be really in tune with the rest of the neighborhood. They could maybe build a tiny house, which would certainly not be, it would be very out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. So I think that I think sometimes it's rare to see this second criterion met, and I think that one's met pretty well. And I think that goes along with the third one, which is I agree with Commissioner Uditsky. That's one I struggle with all the time. Well, what's a reasonable return? What's reasonable enjoyment? But I think leading to the other two, which is a reasonable return, which is it becomes in essence an unbuildable lot unless we are able to do that, or we think it's okay to put a tiny house there. So, which I might think that's okay. I don't think the neighbors would love that all that much. So I think it's very reasonable. And I'm actually glad the applicant was prowling around on Zillow and said she had to come to Elmhurst to see it because it looked like such a beautiful lot. I think that's a testament to this wonderful community. So I would absolutely support this at this point. So any other comments from any commissioner? Commissioner Garland.
Yeah, thanks, Chair Rose. It seems like that to get something reasonable on this lot, and I would agree with everything that's been said, that some variation would be required. And so whether that's a front yard type of setback or a side type of setback. And so I think the usability of this is something that, and the type of home that's being built, I think just puts this over the top for me and would support it. So.
Great, thank you very much. Anyone else have any other comments? Okay, seeing none, I will ask Eileen to please call the roll on the motion.
Thank you. Commissioner Uditsky. I think you're muted.
You're muted, Commissioner.
Oh, there we go. I say no to tiny houses and I vote yes.
Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
You're muted. There she goes. You're muted, Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes, and also I'd like to say I have nothing against tiny houses, Commissioner Uditsky.
Chair Rose.
Yes. Commissioner McCoy, I think you have a opposite
I think
there you are. You're unmuted. You're muted now again.
Oh, see?
Yeah, I don't know. It's contrary. Perhaps you should a little discipline to your computer.
Yeah, really.
So, okay, that passes. Is this one we have ultimate authority on, Eileen?
No, unfortunately, it is not. This will have to move forward. So it will be before the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee on February 8th, and I will contact the applicant with the Zoom instructions for that meeting.
So, Ms. LaPala, you are going to have to do your great presentation again. I think you did a really great job in your presentation. It will go, this is the first step of a three-step process. We really look at this. I hope what you've gotten here today is we take zoning issues pretty seriously here in Elmhurst. And our job in the commission is to really look at it for a lot of the technical aspects and does it meet our criteria. And then it will now go to the Development, Planning, and Zoning Committee, which is a regular committee of the City Council. They will look at it, I think, for some policy perspectives as well as looking at it for some of the same details. If they approve it, it will then, whether they approve it or not, the next step actually is that it goes to the Elmhurst City Council, and they are the final decision makers of this, and that should be generally 2 weeks after that. So It's a lengthy process. We try to cut it down as much as we can, but I think it ensures good decisions. We try to make the best decisions in this community. So we hope to welcome you as a community member in a new house shortly. So good luck. Yes.
Can I speak?
Sure.
Yeah, actually, it's more, I look forward to being there for just more than the beauty of that lot. It's such a wonderful community. I grew up in Glen Ellen, but I haven't lived there for 40 some years. And so I'm actually looking forward to coming back. And I used to always think Glen Ellen was better, but my 4 brothers and sisters live in Elmhurst, so I've been there many times. And it's just a beautiful community with a beautiful downtown. And not to mention, as you all know, your wonderful school system. Unfortunately, I'm past that phase of life, but I know that it adds value to property. So in any event, we're looking forward to it very much.
Great. We'll not engage in the Glen Ellen versus Elmhurst controversy. So we'll welcome you to this wonderful community. So we hope, we wish you good luck in the rest of the process.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. That ends the cases for this evening. The next item of business really is any other business. Let me ask Eileen or Emily, is there any other business?
Just one comment. We are we did get permission to restart the zoning ordinance update project, which we put on pause last March. So hopefully we'll be getting you some information on that here shortly. And I just want to thank the commissioners for your flexibility with these extra meetings. So we will be meeting again next Tuesday. And thank you. We've had a busy year. I really appreciate your flexibility with us.
Yes, we've had a very busy year. The date of the training, could you please remind us what the date of that training is going to be? Is that February 2nd?
No, that is February 23rd.
February 23rd. So next week we will proceed with cases.
Yes.
And then the 2nd we will have cases as well. So we'll have an extra meeting for training on February 23rd. So encourage everyone to come and bring your questions. And I think it will not be as basic as a previous training that we've had. We were hoping that that would be the case. Even though some of you are new to the commission, you have certainly put time and grade right now. So please bring questions that you want answered, or we're hoping that that'll be a real instructive time for all of us. So, okay, anyone else have any other business? Mike, do you have anything? No. Okay. Seeing no other business, can we get a motion and a second to adjourn?
So moved.
And seconded by Commissioner McCoy. So, Eileen, will you call the roll?
Thank you. Commissioner Aditsky.
Yes.
Commissioner McCoy.
Yes.
Commissioner Callaway.
Yes.
Commissioner Garland.
Yes.
Commissioner Hoffman.
Yes.
Commissioner Pittman.
Yes.
Commissioner Snyder.
Yes.